Governor, first time I met you was probably 20 some years ago. Governor Janklow was at an event out in your territory, and you were there as a candidate. But you weren't a candidate that day. I mean, you were a candidate, but it wasn't an event for candidates. Anyway, what got you into this and into politics, and did you ever think you'd get to where you are today?
Yeah, it was interesting. When I was first approached about running for the legislature, I had never really considered any kind of. I was on the school board, but never considered getting engaged in politics. First race I got in, I was the fifth man in a five-way primary for the legislative seat, and once I was successful in that election. I was partnered up with Willard Pummel from Bellefouche, and as a first-term legislator, I found myself in Pierre, and I thought, if I'm going to invest the time to be here, I want a seat at the table. So the next term I ran for leadership, was assistant majority leader, and then had the opportunity to run for majority leader, and so it was just kind of an evolution in my political world. I think our folks, just the way we were brought up, our community, we had a great sense of service, of contributing to our community and our state, and so when I had the opportunity then, when Christy, we'd served together, when she asked me to be her running mate, it was a huge step for me and a great honor.
When did that occur?
That was in, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So it was,
do you recall where you were, or how did she contact you? I
do remember that because it was during the Trump, when he was going through some issues, and I had texted Christy, a Congresswoman Noem at that time, and told her she had made some comments in the press, and I thought she did an extremely talented job of threading the needle, of condemning what he had said in his recordings, but still expressing that she still supported him, and here's why. And it was that same afternoon she called me, and we visited on the phone, and she had not even yet made the decision to run or not. But that's when she first broached the subject with me about if I would consider doing that, and asked me many months later, officially.
Did you ever think you'd sit behind this desk?
No, I really didn't. A lot of people have asked me about it, and at home and different times. Hugh Ingalls, longtime Ingalls Angus, oldest Angus herd in this, for 20 years he's called me governor, and with a big grin on his face every time he says it. So I need to go visit Hugh, and well, you were right. But yeah, and to be here, quite honestly, it just seems surreal to be in this position. Growing up in a state, born and raised in South Dakota, and then being involved in politics. And Janklow was here when I first got elected, and I had such a profound respect for him. He was like God. I remember him holding the door open, coming in when I was late and get to the Capitol, and doors were locked. And I thought, wow, the governor of South Dakota just held the door open for me so I could get into the Capitol. But so, yeah, it's been quite an honor, quite an experience.
How might the Rhoden administration in Pierre differ from the Noem administration, Governor?
Yeah, I've been expecting that question, because I think it's an obvious question, and it's hard to answer because, one of the reasons, the main reason I think that Christy asked me to be her running mate was, we were very closely allied. That's why we became close colleagues in the legislature. We think a lot alike. We have a lot of the same personality traits. We're both pretty blunt and direct. I think she's maybe a little a notch up from that, but so I would say just leadership style, mostly. Politically, we're very aligned. And I think, obviously, the circumstances that we're both in will make our administrations look very different. You know, she developed this national profile, and she used that profile to benefit South Dakota. But it also kind of, put her in a different trajectory than what I'm going to be on. I don't have to worry about doing Fox News interviews every night, and I am not at all critical. I always praise the governor because she used that as a podium to promote her state, and I appreciated that. But I don't have that, for lack of a better word, that baggage won't be on me.
You called for civility during your address yesterday. It was a real theme of your address. It didn't get one line, it got 5 or 6. How do you as governor, where the buck stops, how do you foster that civility?
Well, I think the answer is simple. You lead by example. In our office, that's why I held the offer open that I'm going to be easy to find. And one of my pillars is openness in government, and I pledge that to the press as well. And I fully plan on honoring that. And I think that is a fundamental example to the legislature, because I still get out and around. I try to make it to receptions. I like to meet the public. I like to talk to individual legislators. I like to occasionally go on the floor in the Senate and House and have random conversation with legislators, because that's part of being open and transparent and being able to look people in the eye. I love human contact. This new age of signal messages and text messaging, I'm a little bit impatient with all of that. I want to have direct conversations.
What are your legislative priorities this year?
Well, we spelled out some of them in the speech. Of course, the ESAs being one of them. The prison is a big issue because we've came so far on that issue that we're this far from the finish line. And of course, we've got a new crop of legislators, and there's been concern, but I'm optimistic about that. I toured the prison for the first time just a few weeks ago, and even for me, it was an eye-opener. And I think if the legislators that are still have questions, they need to make a trip to the penitentiary and get the tour that I did. And of course, then we have some of these wild-eyed conspiracy things that are, just untenable, and we need to get past some of that stuff.
Where do you stand on the issue of denying eminent domain for CO2 pipelines?
Well, that remains to be seen as far as what legislation goes through the pipe and what gets on my desk. I think there's a lot of, it's really a tough conversation right now because there's so much misperceptions even about the ballot initiative on the referred law, because Senate Bill 201 was not about eminent domain or property rights. So for me, I'm going to stay out of the fray till I see what they're coming up with and what hits my desk.
I know that you talked about this a little bit this morning, but what is your deadline for trying to reach a decision on whether to run in 2026?
Well, in this day and age, you don't mount a campaign the last 6 months before an election. So, I think after session, I'm going to get serious about, making that decision. I think time's getting ripe in the spring. But I want to be single-minded and clear, and not have a lot of distractions through session, so we can work to get the people's work done and especially with the new legislature, is going to be it's going to be a lot of work and a lot of long nights, I think, and so I want to focus on that.
What's been the biggest surprise so far? Because, I mean, you took office on Saturday, and you've mentioned on more than one occasion now how it's surreal. What's the biggest, wow, I wasn't expecting that?
Oh, let me think. Just the number of changes and the number of things that have to happen in the transition. My new chief of staff, Mackenzie, she's been a godsend because she's the one that's coming to me with, making it happen, and I just have to give her an answer, but it's just a thousand things that have to change, and just my lifestyle. I rented a house in Fort Pierre to stay at, and then all of a sudden all my stuff magically left that house and ended up in the mansion, so I had no choice but I didn't stay at the residence the first night, and the next night I had to because there was nothing left at my home. But I think the first morning it took me 10 minutes just to figure out how to turn the shower on. So it's...
I think, there's a lot of attention on Washington and different decisions and executive orders that are coming out, positive and negative reactions to that from the new Trump administration. Whatever someone's reaction might be, what might your message be to South Dakotans who are concerned about new directions coming from the federal government that might seem out of their control, or they might be frustrated with them or feeling unsure about them? What would you tell that South Dakotan about the latest headline coming from the national news that might have their attention or concern?
Well, I think it's kind of misplaced in some ways because I would express my feeling of optimism about where we're at federally, and the optimism of the chance for us as a state to work with the Trump administration on government efficiencies especially, and overregulation, and the ability to move past a lot of that and really move the needle as far as making government more accountable, more compact, and shrink the size of government at the federal level and state level.
How will you communicate with our congressional delegation?
That's not going to be a problem. I have been so pleased at the response I've got. I had a call just the other day with Senator Thune, and we had a great conversation, and we talked about relationships and the value of our congressional delegation and the governor's office being connected. And we both agreed wholeheartedly. Had similar conversations with Dusty Johnson and with Mike Rounds. So that is not going to be a problem. I am very optimistic about the line of communications I'll have with our federal delegation.
Before we wrap up, Governor, is there anything else that you'd like to tell us or share with us about what has had to have been a wild few days for Larry Rhoden?
Well, I don't know what to say other than I felt so truly blessed. As gigantic as the task seemed, it was made easy. I told many people that asked me how I was going, I said, well, I should be more concerned than I am. But I have a lot of really talented, great people that are taking care of the details. I let them worry about it. And they did, and I've been very well taken care of. I've got a great set of staff and a cabinet. It was really desirable from that standpoint because I had a hand in most of those interviews, if not all those interviews for those cabinet members and the staff we have, and I have a great team.